get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Weisz.
Dr. Jeremy Weisz here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have David Pisarek, WowDigital.com. And before I formally introduce you, David, I will point out some other episodes of the podcast people should check out. Since this is part of the Top Agency series, I had on Jason Swank. He actually had him on twice. He talked about how he built his agency to 8 figures and sold it, and then what he's been doing to buy up agencies. He also has an agency group where agency owners go there and help each other out and mastermind. So check that out. That episode. Also another one, Todd Taskey. Todd Taskey actually helps pair private equity with agencies. He helps sell agencies. He's got the Second Bite podcast, and he talked about, again, the kind of the valuation space, the agency space, what he's seeing. And it's Second Bite. David, I didn't know this until I talked to Todd, is that, they sold their agency when they sell the private equity sells again later on. Sometimes those founders make more on the second bite than they do on the first bite. So that's really interesting. Adi Clevitt, that was a favorite episode too. She is a done for you for SOPs for companies, right? All that sexy stuff that makes things work. So she goes into companies and helps basically detail out all of their SOPs. But we geeked out on our favorite software, productivity stuff, and that was a good episode as well. Check out more on InspiredInsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. David has a podcast. We'll talk about that. We do the accountability, the strategy, and the full execution. So David, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background and make it look easy for the host so they can develop amazing relationships and run their company. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships, and I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. I'm excited to introduce David Pisarek, a passionate advocate for nonprofits. He's been using his tech expertise to drive social change since 2000. David's actually the founder of Wow Digital, and he's on a mission to empower 5,000 nonprofits to impact 10 million lives through smart digital solutions. They actually provide marketing and website development for nonprofits. He's coached and mentored over 200 agencies. And he's one example that I read, David, I'm sure among many, he saved hospital hundreds of thousands of dollars through just IT innovations. So, David, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, everybody. Hope everybody is doing well today.
So just start us off and talk about Wow Digital and what you do.
So my agency, Wow Digital, check us out, wowdigital.com. We do websites and redesigns, as well as, that's probably about 90% of what we do, as well as traditional graphic design type of services. So think logos, branding, PowerPoint presentations, stuff like that. We are niched in nonprofits and charities, and that's what we do.
Talk about that. I know before we hit record, we are chatting. And by the way, if you're listening to the audio, there is a video version. You can see we have Wow Digital on here. Since David is a website master, we're going to poke around. He's going to share some of the stuff and why he does it and some of the behind the scenes. But talk about the niche, choosing the niche, and how you chose nonprofits.
For me, it was pretty obvious what I should go into. So for a large part of my life, I started doing web stuff in 91, just as we got like dial-up internet. When I graduated from college in 2000, I started working at a college, post-secondary higher ed. We also opened up a university. Over my time there, I had done 7 website redesigns, I think, for the 6 or 7 for the college, 2 for the university. And when I left there, I went into healthcare, and I was there for about 5 years before I was restructured. And when I left, just because of who my connections were, so if you think LinkedIn, right, like who am I most connected with? It was people in nonprofit, healthcare, and education. And for me, I reached out to them and I said, "Hey, look, I'm looking for work. Are you looking to hire?" "Well, we're not really looking to hire, but we've got this project." "Oh, really cool. Awesome. Let's talk about that." And I just kind of ramped up my freelance. I always did a little bit on the side here and there, but I just ramped it up. I had interviews, but nothing really kind of like fit. And I was like, you know what? I'm going all in. I'm doing this, focusing on my business. I can't, it's a full-time job to look for work, and it's a full-time job trying to run a business, right? And I can't be split that way. I need to go all in, and that's what I did.
So, David, are you a master coder? Because in 91, there weren't the solutions that we have today where you can press a button and implement WordPress. So, do you have a very technical background?
I do. Yeah. So I started with Notepad way back in the day. And just taking a look at the source code of websites that were out there and trying to figure it out. And I did. And I remember making animated GIFs for some banking companies in the US, really super early days with, I think it was called Animator GIF Pro or something like that. And I ended up in between my years of college, over a 2-month period, I worked at a startup in 1999. So this was like the big dot-com boom. I was their lead developer. I think it was their 4th employee. So there was like the owner, the director, and then myself and a friend of mine who was a designer over there. Over a 2-month period, we raised $1 million in capital funding and went public on the Toronto Stock Exchange. It was like wild times, absolutely wild times back then.
What type of company? What did it do?
They eventually, once they went public for nothing to do with web. The company, what we were doing was we were doing e-commerce type of sites. And we were doing a lot of Flash development for e-commerce back then. I think we ended up winning some award for having the first Flash e-commerce cart checkout type system. But when they went public, it was for gaming. So think like AMC movie theaters where you've got like the actual games and stuff there. That's what they ended up going into.
What's interesting, I could see the beginning of the journey. You went to get these jobs, and instead of getting a job, they just gave you a project. And that seemed to actually be the seeds that started your business. Talk about, so I could see how you can get your first clients. Talk about the first key hire. Like, obviously, right now you've built a team. What was the first, and it doesn't have to be a person, but like position, what was some of the first key hires you put in place as you built the agency?
Well, I knew when I started the agency, I mean, at that point, it was, I don't know, 16 years of working full time doing web development and design. I was like, all right, enough. I don't want to do that. So I reached out to people that I had worked with before. Hey, do you want to moonlight? Do you want to do a little bit of design work, things like that on the side? Cool. So I hired them on kind of like a contract freelance basis to help out with stuff. And I was doing the project management. But at one point, there was just too much information that needed to flow back and forth. My first key hire was a virtual assistant, and having them pass information back and forth, come with me to client meetings, come out of those meetings with notes so that they can take these actionable things and run with them. And it's incredible. I've got this amazing person on my team, Daniel. He's fantastic. He's not basically, he is my operations manager now, and he started as a VA.
What were some of the other pivotal positions you had to put in place to grow the agency?
Account managers. Those are really the big ones. So they're meeting with the clients once. So I meet with them. I do kind of the front end sales, that type of stuff. So if you think of this as like a restaurant, you've got the front of house and the back of house, right? So I'm running the front of house, and the account managers are running the back of house. So once the project comes in, they're the ones that are meeting with the clients. We meet with them every week. So instead of a 2-week sprint cycle, we're doing a 1-week sprint cycle. They're doing all the back and forth between our designers and our developers. They're hopping in we build primarily off of WordPress. I'd say 99.9% is WordPress that we do. So they're sometimes hopping into the sites and doing some of those small little updates and things as well. But they're the ones that are really getting the projects done.
What do you look for in a good account manager? I know friends who they sometimes have a hard time relinquishing that at first because they're worried, the client's going to want me, and now I'm handing them off to someone else. What do you look for in an account manager?
So a quick little note before that is it was the most mind-boggling thing not being involved in the projects. I'm very much like an A-type personality, and I need information. I need to know like what's going on. And that's really one of the main things that I need. I need somebody who can really clearly communicate, that understands what we do, understands what the client wants, and can figure out that bridge. And if you can't figure out, that's fine, but we need to meet so that I can help you sort that out so that you can also learn, or not you, but our account managers can also learn about what is that process? How do we get from A to C? What's that B step in the middle?
From a personality standpoint, what were you looking for?
There's a quote, I don't remember who said it, but it is, you hire for fit, you can always teach skills. I believe that you hire for fit and maybe 50 to 60% of the skill. I need somebody who can kind of start to hit the ground running maybe about a month in. If you think about your own journey as you've worked at different places, there's a learning curve that happens. I can't expect somebody to come in and just hit the ground running and know exactly what to do, how we want everything done. I mean, we have our SOP libraries, we've got our onboarding training, but there's still time. It still takes time.
David, obviously, you help and you have this technical background. Also, you create websites for a lot of different companies, from the design, branding, marketing. Talk about some of the mistakes that people make. You go in, I'm sure you're evaluating. By the way, he has some really good webinars right here. You can see if go to wowdigital.com webinars. I watch one of them, and you kind of break down some of these sites. What are the common mistakes? And again, like we were talking before we hit record, it's not just, obviously you focus on nonprofits, but this, basically is universal for any site. So it applies to anyone. What are some of the big mistakes that you see out there?
Yeah, yes, to your point, we're focused on nonprofits and charities, community groups, whatever. The reality is the work that we do can be applied across any sector. A website is a website. You're going to have the same pitfalls. So some of the biggest pitfalls are around accessibility, making sure that your site is accessible. And, just like if you had a store, you wouldn't want to have a barrier at the entry that prevents people from getting in. So what I mean in terms of website accessibility is there are people who are blind. There are people who have physical impairments or handicap. I don't remember what the appropriate terminology is, but they don't surf the web with a mouse. Right? They might use a keyboard. The coolest one that I saw was a Braille reader. So it's kind of like a book type thing, but they would run their hands on it and it would turn the copy into Braille. So imagine that you've got, if you're a larger organization, you might have your annual report on your website, right? Imagine you've got your chart of accounts receivables and payables and this, that, whatever. If that was a graphic, how could anybody who uses a screen reader, which is just software that'll read out the text, how can they understand what that graphic is, right? You've probably come across a website at some point where you're looking at it and you're like really straining your eyes to read it. It might be like white text on a yellow background is a really great example. For proper accessibility, you need to have a 4.5:1 color contrast ratio for AA compliance. There's the WCAG guidelines around that for AA. So there's some like really low-hanging fruit in terms of accessibility. There's a lot more technical pieces, but what's really neat about fixing accessibility problems is it also helps you with your search engine optimization on the other side of it to drive more traffic into your website, to connect with more people who are your ideal customer or your target that you're trying to connect with, to rank higher in search results to get them to come to you.
So accessibility, actually, I did have a guest, Dr. Hobie Wedler, who came on and is blind. So, definitely even guess, and I was sending him emails, he responded to emails. So I'm sure he's got some very sophisticated software and things that he uses for that. So besides accessibility, what other mistakes do you see people making?
You want to make sure that your site works properly on mobile. That's another really big one. Google has actually said, John Mueller, who's like way up there in the Google ranks, has come out and said that if your site is mobile friendly, that it will actually rank higher. They want to have great mobile experience. And I think during the period of COVID, the 2.5 to last 4 years, right? People are sitting on their couch. They're using their devices more and more these days. And you want to be able to have a great experience for them on those devices as well.
So we're looking at your site, David. I figure we could go through a few things because obviously you have meticulously planned out every piece of your website. So you can see, obviously, there's a nice, clear headline, subheadline, book a free consult, and some of the things you're talking about here. I don't know if that's you're talking about, or it gives accessibility here. What other elements here? And you see the chat function. What other elements should we be looking at based on how you structured this and what elements you included on your page?
Yeah, before the show, we were talking about really clearly understanding your audience, right? And there's 3 main pieces to that. There's demographic, where, who are they, age, sex, income, education, that type of stuff. There's geographic, right? Where are they located? And then there's psychographic. So what are those things in their head that they care about, that they should, where is it that they spend their time, right? So if you want to connect with somebody specifically, if they're your ideal customer, if they're, I don't know, 50 to 40 to 50% of your buyers or the people that interact with your brand, where are they hanging out? You want to put time and effort there, right? So understanding those things, but more than that, understanding those, it gives you the clarity around what are their pain points, right? And, when they come to your website, you want them to feel that they're in the right spot, that this is where they need to be, right? So at the top of my site, instead of saying we do websites for nonprofits and charities, that's talking about us. Nobody cares. So look at your website and ask yourself, so what, right? I love saying that, like looking at something and going, so what? Like, how does this actually make you feel? Instead, what I want to do is I want to create an emotional connection with them, right? And we advise our clients on this as well. And so saying like, you're making the world a better place will help you change more lives, that really resonates with them. And then we hit them with not we do web design branding, but website design, branding, and marketing versus we do it. I want to try to keep the we and the I, like the company, out of it and just speak to them to try to resonate with them.
And then obviously there's book a consult
Yep.
that you'll do here. And then you have some testimonials of results as well, which are important.
Yeah, there's what we need to do is build trust with the people that are coming to our site, right? And one of the easy ways to do that, you can have a logo wall. I have one further down on the page. I don't know, there's like 30 logos or something there. But the testimonials are really clear. We can go onto anybody's website, grab their logo and put it on our site and say, yeah, okay, we worked for them. But the testimonials, there's actually another human. Presumably, they're a real person from that business. You could hire an actor, I guess, right? But it really speaks to the work that we're doing and builds that level of trust.
Yep. One thing that stuck out in my research, and I won't make you divulge all of it, but the 3 simple words, right? You could see to increase donations by 20%. I don't know if you want to share one. If you want to get it, you have to opt into to his email list. But what is one thing that'd be interesting that we should share about this?
All right, so secret sauce time here. One of the words, one of the three. So if you want to know the other two, go grab the ebook there. It's saying thank you, right? Connecting with the donors, either one-on-one, a custom email. It could be an automated message that feels like it was custom. So what do I mean by that? If I'm on your website and I make a donation to charity, whatever, $20. Let's say I go on tonight at 10 p.m. It is unreasonable for me to expect a human to thank me for that at 10 p.m. I'm not expecting anybody at that organization. What you can do is you can build automations that will send messages business days between the hours of 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. Right? And then you can have it, you can build these kind of smart processes in the back end. But yeah, you want to say thank you. You also want to talk with that about the impact that those donations have, right? You want to create that emotional connection.
Yeah, and so there's a specific you worked with Care Canada, and I'd love to hear more about what you did with them, and maybe you could just describe maybe the before and after.
Okay, so their website, it's a WordPress site. Before or when they came to us, they were experiencing a number of problems on their website. They were using a really old page builder that was kind of half broken, and there was like coding displayed on the front end of the site. It wasn't great, and it was hard for them to manipulate and manage the website. We ended up redesigning it, bringing it more in line with the global brand for Care. We actually introduced some kind of design elements that were against the brand, but they said, no, we love it. We're going to go with it anyways. So it's always fun to kind of like push that branding a little bit there. And we redesigned their site. We cut out a ton of content. Their site was 1,852 pages. And when we relaunched, we did part of our process. We've got like a 12-step process that we go through. I'm going like this because I have a graphic that is the Wow Digital roadmap for projects, but it is, we did a full content audit of everything across the board and identified all the problems for them. And in doing that, they're getting a lot more traffic now to their site. It's more SEO optimized. And then I think it was maybe 6 or 7 months after we launched, they said, hey, we want to do something to create a landing page for Youth Savings and Loans Associations. So we created this landing page for them. It was about 4 hours of work, and that brought in $25,000 in donations for them.
And there's
I can't take
another
all, right? Like they have their email list, they have their marketing, they have all that they did. I can't take the credit, but it just goes to show you the power of web and technology.
Participation. What did you do with them?
We did the same thing. We took a website, their website, it was a sideways scrolling website. And on desktop, on mobile, it was up and down, but going sideways left to right, it was a really difficult to navigate site. And they were using a couple different platforms and they wanted to bring it all in-house. So we redid it and brought it in to, it's a WordPress site. The new one now is actually a multi-site. We built out a video player system right in their site. They didn't want to use YouTube or Vimeo or Wistia or anything like that for their videos. So yeah, that's what we did for them. And they actually just wrapped up what they call their community challenge. And we built out a whole section for their site around that. And there were over 2 million people that were involved in that project across the country. So many people were involved that actually our mission of helping 5,000 organizations to impact 10 million lives, we're going to be changing that to 20 million lives.
Talk about the community challenge for a second. You know, obviously gamification is really a strong way to get people to take action as well as accountability. What are some of the elements that worked maybe in the community challenge and maybe some that did not work that you thought would?
Yeah, so the community challenge, it's something that they've done for the last few years. So it's not a new thing that we invented at all. What we did was we redeveloped all of it into the platform so that they could stop spending all kinds of money with a third party to actually run this stuff. And in doing so, we created scoreboards for province. It's a Canadian organization, and then also by city. And at the end of it, the cities that the city that won, they get $100,000 grand prize from it.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, it worked really, really well. There were a couple little kinks in it where they're not on our server, they're on an AWS environment. If anybody wants to get like really geeky and techie about it, there were a couple little kinks in terms of firewall rules, but we got those sorted out like super early.
You were saying, yeah, and this is interesting, just kind of how it's laid out, and I could see the that's a pretty substantial grand prize, so I'm sure it motivates people a bit. You know, as far as the this challenge, are there other challenges that you've seen work? I mean, it could be ones you've worked on directly or that you've just seen, and some of the elements there.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand. All right, so your audience that's listening to this, they're probably not nonprofits, right? But I think there's lots of opportunity for organizations, businesses, big, small, corporate, whatever, it doesn't matter, to actually interact locally with a nonprofit. And I don't know when this is actually going to air, but yesterday I ran my workshop on how to get corporate sponsors for your nonprofit. And I think the opposite should be happening as well, where businesses are going, how can I interact? How can we help a nonprofit? What are the nonprofits that we care about? Are there alignments? So there's lots of opportunity in terms of marketing around that. So any organizations that have done anything with nonprofits, charities, community groups, local church, synagogue, whatever, mosque, whatever that you go, it's not just an opportunity to help, but there is a little bit of a selfish opportunity there as well, that you can get some marketing from it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. I love that you said that and connected the dots because, you know, there is a mission behind that. Obviously nonprofit. So if you align with that mission and, you know, you can kind of turn your business into like at least have a mission-based project with them. How do you recommend, like, businesses listening to this, like that sounds like a great idea, David. I love that idea. What have you seen work when they interacting with a nonprofit as far as what they could do together?
Yeah, a lot of time it doesn't need to be money that you give, right? It could be volunteering. So maybe there's a local soup kitchen. You can once a month or once a quarter get your team to go down and help out. You can host an event at their facility, for example. So if you're going to have a big gala or fundraising, or board of directors meetings, or executive blah blah blah, whatever it happens to be, you can host those at your local community center, right? And help support them in that kind of way. It could also be maybe your expertise. Boards, sorry, not boards, nonprofits need people to sit on their boards of directors, right? So it's really like at that point, it's giving your time. There's lots of opportunity.
No, thanks for that. I like that, and thinking of the kind of creative ways to help the community, but also give back and also kind of create a mission-based movement within a company. You were talking about before we hit record which was surprising to me a little bit. Not all these nonprofits just get funds through donations, but also through the government as well.
Yeah, it's surprising. A lot of our clients, they do accept donations. We've got donation functionality in their site with the CRM and tracking and this and that and all that kind of stuff. But majority of their funding, it's strange, but majority of their funding comes from government and grants and that, or even from people's estates, like when they pass away. There's a huge amount of money. I think it's called the silver tsunami, right? That's going to be passed down from generation down to the next generation over the next 10 years. I think it's something like $2 trillion worth of money or something. And I talk to our clients about like, look, you need to connect with the youth so that they care about your organization, right? And at some point down the road, maybe they'll volunteer, maybe they'll donate money as they get it, that kind of thing. But yeah, a lot of the organizations, they get government grants.
Um, David, I have one last question. First of all, thanks for sharing your expertise, knowledge, and walking us through some of the mistakes and even sharing. I think at least myself, I could always use thank you more. So I appreciate that. So check out wowdigital.com. You could get the other two words and get the ebook. Last question is resources, some of your favorite resources. And this could be software. It could be tools, it could be books, it could be mentors. What are some of your favorite resources?
Yeah. So one of my favorite books, I've keep this on this little table that I've got beside me here. It's by Ian Harris. It's called Hooked on You. And the title says I guess the subtitle says it all. The genius way to make anybody read anything. It's a super thin book. I think it's maybe like 90 pages. I think maybe it took me, I read slow. I think it took me like an hour-ish. And it's really about, how can you use storytelling to help get the point across and engage people and kind of bring them in. Awesome, awesome, awesome book. The other one, which has helped me in my business, is by Phil Jones. It's called Exactly What to Say. So it's kind of like the how to win friends and influence people type of idea, except in this book, it's specifically like exactly what you need to say in certain situations. This has been super helpful for me.
And then obviously we have to mention your podcast, and then maybe a couple favorite guests that you've had on.
Yeah. So my podcast, it's called Nonprofit Digital Success. You can get it by going to wowdigital.com. We've got a podcast link in the navigation, or you could go to nonprofitdigitalsuccess.com. It'll bring you there. In terms of favorite guests, I had on the show Alex Charfin, who is a entrepreneur, really awesome
Alex.
guy.
Yeah.
And we were talking about entrepreneurial mindset. One of the things that I like to say a lot is you need to run your nonprofit like it's a business. So we kind of like dug in on that a little bit, which was pretty cool and fun to do.
Yeah, he's a smart dude.
He is. I'm super lucky that I was able to have him on there. Another one was Anthony A. Dix Jr. And we were talking about like, how do you lead a team of creatives? Right. We kind of switch the conversation, talk about nonprofits, but there's a lot of learnings in there for sure that you can apply to any business, any organization, any size.
Love it. Any favorite software?
I guess there's two. So if we're talking about AI, there is one called Perplexity. It's kind of like where like ChatGPT had a baby with Google. And it's absolutely fantastic. Anybody that's interested, go set up a free account and just do a search like who is, and then put in your name and take a look at the power of this thing. So for example, if we were going to have a guest on a podcast, we could put in their name and say like, who is this person? Give me some background on them. What's their expertise, things like that. So we can build up a profile. As podcast hosts, from host to host, we ask our guests usually for a bio, so it kind of like helps us in that way. But it's really neat if you're going to have a prospect meeting with a business, a corporation, somebody there, you can use this to dig up some information on them, not dig up dirt, right? But get a better understanding about who they are, who their business is, what they do, who they serve, that type of thing. So that's the first one. The second one I'm going to say is ClickUp. So
we love ClickUp. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so awesome. It's like Asana, it's like Monday.com. I haven't used those, but for the last 3 years or so, we've been really heavily investing our time and effort into ClickUp. We use that for project management. We also use it for customer success. So we built out forms in there that we put into what we call a hub page, and our clients fill it in. It creates a task. It automatically assigns it to our account manager. And then we also include a Kanban board so they can see the status of all the tasks without actually needing to get into our project management software. So we can have all those kind of internal conversations without worrying that the client is seeing that.
Love it. David, first of all, thank you. Everyone check out wowdigital.com and more episodes of the podcast, and we'll see everyone next time. Thanks, David.
Thank you so much, Jeremy.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.